Well, yeah, I think what we've done here is kind of naturally segued into the other key topic we were going to discuss, which is building a culture of trust and resilience.
Yes.
Right? So trust is basically the bottom line when it comes down to integrating cybersecurity into the culture of an organization, right? You gave an example of someone clicks on something and is hesitant to speak up. That example can be demonstrated across roles, right? We may have introduced a tool set that introduced a vulnerability, and it may not be something that someone wants to bring up to leadership right away. We may have developed a new software module that had some vulnerabilities into it that weren't recognized right away. When we can come to the table and be honest about things that were missed, the risk that it has introduced into the organization, that builds trust amongst your peers, right? As opposed to hiding that and having someone else bring that out to the table. But I think I lost track of what your question was exactly.
No, what you answered it. It was, okay, what's the next step when that happens? But what I liked about what you did when we were talking about that, because I was looking at it from the perspective of, okay, I'm the end user, I did something, and I have to have integrity and say, okay, I did that. But you also looked at it as the integrity of the leadership of the organization. Okay, so you've introduced this process, procedure, or system, and while we think it's the best available that we have for the organization, there may be flaws that we just don't know. And so the other side of building trust, if I'm the one that introduced that, and the natural tendency is to be defensive. And, well, you know, I'm sure that it worked. You must have done something else, instead of saying, wait a minute, this is an issue. Own it. Okay, I own the problem. It's my system. Tell me, because I want to stop this and take a deeper dive and take a look. You know, that's integrity.
Sure.
That's an integrity model demonstrated from the leadership side, the organizational leadership side.
And it also ties into relationship building.
Yes.
Right? Achieving trust is through the building of relationships. So it's being transparent and candid when issues occur, but it's also proactively building relationships across the business, right? So as we mentioned earlier, cybersecurity is not just the role of IT or the security team within that. It's the role of the entire organization. And so as a part of that, IT and the security team need to proactively reach out to all of the business units, you know, starting from the C-suite level, upper level management, and even middle management. Start to build the one-on-one relationships with these teams and understand the subculture within their departments. Right. Understand what's important to them, what keeps them up at night, not just from an IT perspective, but what's on their roadmap, what are their objectives and their goals and their deadlines, and how does what you do from a security perspective impact all of that?
Right. I agree 100%. That is so important to have that collaboration and open communication, which is dialogue. You know, it's not just, oh, did I send you this? Did you, send and receive it? It's the open dialogue. How's this working for you? Because I think you mentioned that before, was you introduce a system. It looked great, but then we start at practical application. It's hindering them from doing some part of their job, or at least they feel that. So we have to work through that system. So, but it does. It comes, as now we see how it all comes back to organizational culture. How do we introduce these things? And we call organizational turbulence. It's just that feeling. We've all been in airplanes when we've had mild turbulence. You know, it's no big deal. But if you've ever been in an airplane when you're wondering if this thing's going to stay in the air, you know, that's the type of constant change that can happen in an organization. And it puts a lot of fear, puts people in a fear paradigm. And then they get out of that proactive accountability, and then it goes into reactive accountability. You know, and that's where you get the whack-a-mole type concepts going on. People just put their head down, and then you get malicious compliance. Okay, you did this, well, then I'm just going to follow these rules and not get anything, not get my work done. Because they may not have. It's just the importance of that global concept. We're all in this together, right?
Yeah, and I think that in itself speaks to another kind of theme within integrating culture, which is kind of the resilience and the adaptability of an organization. Right. When teams are going through exercises where there are setbacks and leadership is right there along with the team, guiding them through that. I think that lessens the fear aspect of, something, whatever the driver was for this particular setback. If, people are allowed to make mistakes and the focus is on how do we remediate this? How do we move forward? Right? And what are our do-betters to avoid this going forward? That's really that teamwork, that camaraderie that makes a team more resilient and capable when those issues come up.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and we call that the growth mindset. There's going to be hiccups, there's going to be turbulence, and how do we look at that? I used to look at it as, oh my gosh, it's punitive, something's bad is going to be, written up or something negative is going to happen. We actually turn that mindset as this is a growth opportunity, all of us within the organization. And so now that we've experienced that, now we have those transferable knowledge and transferable skills to avoid or see things into the future. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations don't do that. Somebody makes a mistake, that's it, they're out of here, they made a mistake, we can't have it. And they lose out on a good employee that may have just had a simple mistake. And it might have been maybe on the fault of the leadership team themselves. The resilience is built by allowing people to go through that growth. And then it's, okay, so now they're resilient, they have that, they know they can get through the next one.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and then their mindset is open, okay, let's look for these things that may be in the periphery, they just haven't happened yet. So now they're looking for ways to grow. What a great place for an organization to be.
Yeah. And I think, other things that support that mindset and that relationship building, that growth scenario, is when there are strong change management protocols within an organization. And the cybersecurity leadership team really needs to be aware of that organizational unit's culture.
Yes.
It's very important to be tapped into the change management structure and processes and build relationships with a lot of the leaders in that space and their middle management staff, because that ties back into the relationship building activities, getting to know those folks and understanding their expectations when you are introducing cybersecurity tools into the organization, or when your security team has a responsibility to assess other changes that are being introduced into the organization, right? Where you can be perceived as a security team, the blocker or the unit that's going to delay the rollout, right? When you build relationships amongst that change management board, then you all get to understand where each person is coming from, and that reduces the friction across the teams.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and it keeps people rowing in the same direction. They understand that. One of the things that you mentioned in the different work units and the subcultures, and every unit should have a team design. What's the scope of work? What's the work that they're trying to accomplish? And what are those core processes and procedures? And that would be a good place to start and take a look at that. And then you bring in the people factor. Okay, taking the people into consideration. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. It's so important. Take the people in consideration because the work they're trying to do, and then look at that globally beforehand, and then bring it. Because a lot of times people just, we're just going to go do this, and it causes this organizational turbulence, this ripple effect that when it's done improperly and it's done too often, then the people start to lose confidence in the leadership.
Sure.
And while the leadership thinks they're doing the right thing, and their intent is the right thing, but we are judged not by our intent but by our actions.
Sure.
So when leadership teams do that, it's the action that caused the turbulence that people lose faith in their leadership team.
Right, yeah. And so that's why it's important that those relationship building activities are not just with the upper level leadership teams, but those middle management managers and even sometimes down the hierarchy, because all of those team members bring valuable perceptions and perspectives to what is happening, right?
Yes.
Perceptions because what their perceptions may be and you see to be false could be also what is perceived by many folks across the organization. So it's really important to understand people's perceptions of what changes are being introduced versus what is reality, because then you can get ahead of that with communications. To that same point, though, their perspectives are important because while you may be aligned with leadership is on board for introducing these changes, these managers and their teams are going to bring to light perspectives that maybe your team hasn't thought through in its entirety. That will make you take a step back and say, oh, we do need to do a little bit more due diligence around X, Y, and Z. Oftentimes around the user experience, the impact to the end user that these changes introduce, which are primarily the drivers for the turbulence that occurs.
Yes, absolutely. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and that's why it's important for organizations to look at that holistic global approach. And people working within an organization should also know that there's different times, different seasons within an organization. But every organization should be trying to grow. So with growth comes change. A level of change is what keeps us growing.
I did want to echo the point also about, when leadership is aligned with the changes you're introducing, and it is important to have that executive level sponsorship, right? Because when you are working through those changes with all of the different teams, there's something to be said if the executive team is advocating for the change. People are a little bit more invested in finding a way to make it work, bringing up the challenges, bringing up, the impact that it's going to have. But rather than saying, this is something we can't do because of X, Y, and Z, it's more of a message of, you really need to be aware that this is what you're going to be doing to this company. How do we work through that, right? When the executive sponsorship is there, that's the latter is more of the conversation, how that goes.
Yeah, I like that that connection to the executive level. They're really tasked with forecasting the future. Where are we going? What are our threats? Where are we going? Where are we growing? Right? And then it's that next level below them that brings these. It's a concern to all of them at the executive level, but it could be the VP level or the director level that brings these thoughts, concerns, and solutions, right, to the executive team, the C-suite. And they're really focused, they should be focused on growing the organization. What is the future? Where are our threats? And there's plenty of them right now. And I was listening to a podcast just recently, McKinsey and Company, about the impact that AI is having on the C-suite and how they're running with their hair on fire, so to speak, trying to get ahead of this and what's new and what's important today is last week's news. It's moving so fast.
Oh yes.
So that's the type of thing that they're not worrying about or trying to get a vision around, trying to grasp. And but cybersecurity is all part of it, especially when AI is introduced.
Well, there's so much in that. I think we could have another series on that. But
Good.
It's exciting to hear that leadership is really focusing on that from different aspects, and hopefully they're mostly excited about it because that is just where we are now. And I think we're always talking about the role AI plays in multiple tasks that we're doing. Along with that is from the cybersecurity perspective, like AI and cybersecurity are no longer separate entities, right? They're not mutually exclusive. There's one doesn't exist without the other. Whether we're talking about the tools that aid cybersecurity and finding threats and all of these data points that need to be processed, or we're talking about innovation and productivity and the drivers for finding how AI helps streamline that. The foundation of that needs to be a strong cybersecurity posture, which again kind of segues us into the third topic we were going to talk about, which is kind of that balance between innovation and security. But I do feel like before we go into that topic, I want to circle back to the document that you wrote.
Okay.
When we were talking about this at the top of the conversation, how did we end up here? You wrote a really beautifully phrased document, and I thought maybe we can speak to that a little bit some of the points you made in that.
Well,